Welcome to another edition of How to Fix It Yourself with Dave and Dave. This is the continuation of replacing the window regulator on the BMW that we've been working on. This should be the final episode where we put the door back together again and connect all the pieces. So this should answer some of the questions that may have been lingering from the earlier ones. As we show you how to put things back together again, it might make sense on some of the stuff that maybe wasn't quite as clear in some of the earlier ones for individuals. For most of you, I think the stuff on the earlier videos are pretty standalone as it is. So we're going to go ahead and get started putting all the pieces back together again. We've had to connect some of the electrical in order to run the window and be able to run the regulator. And so we'll have to take those all apart and get it together. However, the first thing we're going to talk about is how to put the panel back on the door. All right, so now that we've got the door to this location or this part, and they've got most of the vapor barrier back on, you want to notice where each of these tie strap blocks are. And you want to be sure and use those to tie your cable harnesses back into the door to secure it, because that'll make your door go back on a lot smoother. Now over here in this corner, you've got this big, huge cable that comes through here, and this will hold your door piece out and won't let it sit in properly unless you use that tie wrap block there. And so you can see once you use it properly and you kind of work it back in there, you get this out of the way so that that'll sit in there. And so it's very important to use that block right there, especially for this, if you want your door to go back on properly. So, and it has spots for 2 tie wraps. I'd recommend to go ahead and use both tie wraps. Now if you want, you can disassemble this light here just to get it out of the way. So go ahead and use the both tie wraps and then just kind of work it in so that you get that nice and snug. Now you want to push it in that direction a little bit to make sure it snugs in there real nicely. And then you can just start working these tie wraps on to hold it. And just get it nice and snug on there and hold that back in place there, and that'll allow your interior door panel to set in there nicely. So with that in place, we can now just trim those off. And then I'm just going to rotate those down so that those pieces are out of the way. Come on, rotate down. There you go. Just rotate those down so they're out of the way and they're not going to get in the way of the door. Then the next thing is go ahead and put your light back on. Again, that just clips right on there. Okay, and make sure you get it back in there so that the tab locks it in place. So now you've got all of the pieces in place. We put a little tie wrap here just to kind of hold the cables together. We're not making that really tight. And this should keep everything out of the way now so that we can get that door panel on there nice and smoothly. One of the things that you'll probably find when you take your door panel off is that you have a bracket here that looks just like this. And you might wonder, okay, what is good is that doing? Likely as not, the black plastic clip holder has probably been broken out of there and never replaced. I strongly recommend you get one of these and put it in place because you'll find in the door itself is a clip that goes right through there, and that stabilizes the center of the door and gives it a lot more strength in terms of its flexibility. So be sure you put one of those on. If it's on there, great. Also check on the door, because when you take the door panel off, it might have just been pulled out of here as you slid the panel up to take it off. You might have just left it sitting in the door itself. But it's easiest to put it back together again if you have that plastic clip holder in place. We tried a couple of different clips that you can get in the aftermarket, and none of them were very strong. They didn't hold, they cracked easily. So we finally ended up getting the BMW clips. I'm not sure the plastic color means anything. You might get a different color from BMW, but I would recommend that you get the factory clips if at all possible. Now, some of these clip holders have broken out, and so we used just a little bit of a hot melt glue just to kind of hold some of these in place. Most of them, you'll notice, slide in there and they're fairly loose, so you have a fair amount of play to make sure you line up with the hole okay. And that's the way it's actually designed. So I would go ahead and get the right clips just so you don't have to keep playing with it. This is the third round of clips that we've tried, and this round we bought the BMW version. All right, so we're ready to put the door back together again. We've put the vapor barrier back up, put the airbag back on, and connected the airbag. The one thing that we mentioned, but I just want to review briefly, is the importance of making sure that this particular wire harness is clipped back into place. Otherwise it'll stick out, because that's a pretty thick wire harness and it's going to get in the way of getting a good seal on the door up top. Again, trim your wires up and make sure you groom the wires to make sure they're in a good place so that they're out of the way and not getting in the way of things. So we've done all that. We've talked a little bit about the clips, but one thing that we didn't talk about is this particular piece on the fiber liner had been crushed and broken several times. And so we used our technique of super glue with baking soda to put a layer on this side, and then we sanded it back so it was nice and flush. And then we've got a nice fillet on the back side here. So this now is just as solid as the rest of this, so that'll hold the door in place a lot better than it was. So I think we're pretty well ready to start feeding the wires back through. Also remember to get this plastic clip in place, which goes right here onto this. So after you get the door kind of in place, you'll have to pop that back and get that seated on that clip to kind of hold things in place. So I think we can now start feeding the wires through and getting things lined up and put in place. All right, so when you start putting this together, you want to think through what needs to happen. This wire that goes down to the lower light bulb is probably one of the more easy ones to forget about, and then you have a real problem getting that pulled back together again at the end. So you kind of get that one fed through. Then you want to start leaning it forward to start making all the other wire connections that can be made. So you've got this one that goes, let's see, goes in there. Oops, and yeah, it'll pop out if you're not careful. But that's okay, you can pop it back in after you get the door all back together again. Just remember to hold it in place or to pop it back together. You've got your speaker wires here. So this is where it starts getting a little tricky, because now you've got less room to work. So you need to get your wires let's see, yeah, so that little one goes there, the larger one goes there. Then you can start again, it's just a matter of just kind of working your way through it. You can start feeding the control harnesses through the control part and the door latch through there. And now you've pretty well got all the pieces that need to get fed through taken care of, so now you can start setting the door in place. Again, you've got to watch your locking mechanism. Make sure you get that in place. All right, so now we're pretty well set to start actually putting the door in place. So there it goes. All right, so remember, you've got to hook it into these clips. And you can start lining up your plastic clips that go in the holes. So we've now got the door panel on. The clips don't automatically align with the holes, so you might need to get a little screwdriver or a small needle nose pliers to line them up. Try not to hammer on them too quick until you're sure they're lined up, because you can still break them even though the factory ones. But we now have them all in. We got them all juggled in place. We've got it all lined up properly on the clips up at the top, and the center clip here is definitely in, and it's nice and solid. So now we're going to finish putting the other trim pieces in, and the light bulb assembly down here, and then we'll put the window trim in up here, and we should be good to go. All right, now when you put the handle back in, be sure you remember to put the screw back into the center. It's a Torx bit, a Torx 20 that it takes. All right, so you might have to juggle things around a little bit to get that hole to line up, and then just tighten it up so that it's nice and snug. And then be sure you put your cover clip back on. It's indexed a little bit right here on the bottom. So, and this is where having very small fingers would be very helpful. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the window control mechanism back together again, just the reverse of what we did before. So you can start with the large one. Now remember, these slides are there to help pull them off and put them on. So as you put it on, you're going to need to push the slide in as it goes down to lock it in place. So you want to do this back one first, and again, you want, as it goes in, you want to be sure that latch mechanism moves up and locks behind the teeth. And then the same thing on this front one. Again, as it goes in, you want to be sure that comes up and locks. And now you've got your control system together. So now you can work that back into the door. Get the wires out of the way. All right. Okay. And then after you got the door all put together, don't forget to put in your light there at the bottom. Just click that in, and then that slides up and pops in. Come on. Come on, get back up in there. There it goes. All right. And the plastic cover. All right, so now we've got the door all put together with the exception of the window trim up here. All right, and then when you want to put the this final window trim piece in, remember it's got to sit into the black clips that are there. So you just start working it in. As you go down, and it might take a little bit to get it in there right, but I think we've pretty well got it. So now that you've got it all together, you want to check to make sure everything works. Especially make sure that the window goes up and down and that window trim piece doesn't pop out of there. So, and it looks like we need to just juggle that just a bit here. And check all the rest of your windows. Make sure all the switches are working. I hope you've enjoyed this episode on working on the window regulator and the door panel on this particular BMW Series 7. It's old, and when you deal with old cars, you just have to be patient and try different things. We tried a couple of different clips, and we finally ended up going with a dealer clip. If the cheap Chinese clips that you buy, you know, on Amazon or on eBay work for you, great, but you know, just be cautious to be aware that those might be one-time use clips if you can get them to work at all. We finally ended up going with dealer clips just to make sure that we could get this door back together again. Beyond that, it's just a matter of grooming and working and being patient to try and get all the pieces to fit as best as you can. And sometimes things won't exactly fit completely right, but you know, that's just the nature of the beast when you're working on an older car like this. Now, as far as clips are concerned, there are a few manufacturers that the OEMs go to across the world. If you can find a local supplier that actually supplies those type of clips in an aftermarket basis, great. You might get a real good quality clip for a lot cheaper than you're going to get it from the dealer. But push comes to shove, at least you can get the right clip from the dealer. We got the window regulator working. We've got all the electronics working. We've got the door fit back together again. I think it's about as best as we're going to get it. And it fits very well. We've got just a few places where there's a couple of gaps that it would be nice not to have, but that's just the nature of the beast. So we hope you've enjoyed it. We hope we've been able to be informative and help you. Be sure you click on the subscribe button and click on the like. And please leave any comments that you have in the items below. The different parts we've used, the different tools we've used, they're all going to be listed in the descriptor below. So have a good day and good luck with working on your Series 7 BMW.